Now, unlike all the other objects that we started before, we're not going to actually start this one with a box. We're going to use a cylinder. So I'm just going to grab a cylinder and I'm going to draw it out. And I'm just going to align it to our player character in the center here. So this is way too big. We need to make this a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to bring our radius down a little bit and the height down a bit. Now this is going to float in our scene, and we're going to place all these objects inside of Unreal 4 afterwards. But right now we're just kind of blocking out the scene inside of 3ds Max to make sure that everything looks nice and cohesive. That's the word of the day for this section, cohesive. All right, that looks good. Now if we look at our concept, you can see that we have a disk up here, and then a center disk, and then a disk in the bottom. So what we're going to need to do is I'm going to set my height segments to 1 and my cap segments to 1. And I'm just going to convert this guy to an editable poly. I'm going to grab my vertexes and I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. I'm going to grab my edges and I'm going to grab this edge loop down here on the bottom of our object, and I'm just going to scale the edges out. I'm just going to delete the piece in here. And I'm going to extrude our edges down. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into my modifiers tab and I'm going to symmetry this. And I want to symmetry it on the z-axis, which is the down axis. And I'm going to open up my mirror and I'm just going to drag this down a little bit. So now we can see that we have a disk with a disk in the middle of it, which is looking pretty cool. And I'm going to convert that to an editable poly. And now we're not actually going to use any of the center ring here, so I'm just going to delete that and do the same on the bottom. We're not going to use the center ring here either, so I'm going to get rid of that. And now I'm going to soften my edges by beveling them. Just a little bit, just to make it nice. Okay. And now if I actually turn off my wireframes, you can see that, it's all segmented and faceted, and that doesn't look very good. So what we're actually going to do is I'm going to select my faces, and I'm going to come down to my smoothing groups, and I'm just going to really quickly set my smoothing groups. Those will all go on smoothing group 2, so they'll be nice and smooth. These guys will all be smoothing group 3. These guys will be on smoothing group 4. And you just want to set them. There we go. That looks nice. Now again, let's jump to our side view. It's always good to jump back from your side view to make sure that things are looking right. Okay. And I'm just going to apply my gray material and add my black lines right there. Cool. Now we're actually starting to make a little bit more headway with some of our objects. Originally we just had this piece for our disk. Now we have a much nicer little disk right here. I actually think I want to make it just a little bit bigger. I'm going to bring it out. So our player will be able to run along and jump on this guy, and it'll be nice and cool. It gives something for the player to test around with and you to actually test to see the Unreal 4's side-scrolling base project, which is really neat. Now, if you noticed in our concept art, I haven't actually been working on any of these rivets that are all around our objects. And the reason for that is because I'm actually going to handle that inside of the texture, and we'll get to that in a little while. I don't want you to think that I'm skimping or forgetting. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is the vents that are in the background right here. These vents right here. These objects are going to be a little bit more complicated because of the things that are on them. So I'm going to create a tube. And that might sound weird, but don't worry. I promise I won't lead you astray. So here's our tube right here. And we're going to knock out our height segments. And let me just see really quick. Yeah, it has a good amount of sides. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add 4 more sides. So it has a little bit more of a cylindricalness. If you reduce the amount of sides, then, it's going to look a little bit more... Well, if you bring it down to 3 sides, you're going to have a triangle and then a box. So I'm going to make it 22 sides. There we go, 22. And I'm just going to rotate it onto its top. And I'm just going to align it back here. And now it's way too big, but again, we're going to scale these down properly. So I'm just going to scale it down here. And if we refer to our concept art, it's kind of like about 1/4 of the height of one of these guys. And that's about 1/4 of the height right there. So, perfect. But I also want to bring in the radius 2, which is going to be that inner circle, so it has a little bit more of a cap. Go. And I'm going to convert this to an editable poly. Now, we don't need any of these back-sided polygons, so we could just come through, and I'm just going to delete them. And then I'm going to grab my edge tool, and I'm going to chamfer these edges. Chamfer. There you go. Nice. Now, the next thing that I need to do is we want the backside of the vent to be black, so it looks like there's no light coming through it. So we're going to handle that in the texture, but we need something for the texture to exist on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my border tool and select all of these edges, and I'm just going to hold Shift and drag and bring them all in. I'm going to cap that up there. And then I'm just going to collapse that face. There we go. Now the next thing we need is a series of boxes that are going to be the actual vent parts where all the steam would come out. I scale it down. Convert it to an editable poly. So we're not going to need these sides, or the back, or the other side over here. And I'm just going to grab the edges, and once again, chamfer the edges. So this is going to be our center part of the vent. I'm actually going to scale it down a little bit. I'm just going to drag it up. A couple more copies. Okay. I'm going to drag it down. And one more. Now we actually just have to move our vertexes so they're not sticking outside of the vent. Drag them in. Drag them in here. We're going to do the same thing on these guys. Drag them in. I'm sure this is absolutely riveting for you guys. Some of these objects are really simple, and I assume that you guys can probably make them really easily. But sometimes it just goes a long way just to see another artist or another person do these things. Okay? And since these are all going to be one object, I'm just going to attach them all together. Saves me time. And then I'm just going to grab our gray material and turn our wireframes back. There we go. And drag this guy down here. And we have our 2 vents. And now we can, I mean, if you really wanted to, you can have these vents wherever you want it. But I just have them there. Contextualizes. You can actually have them on both sides. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Alright, so now we have our platform and our vents. And I think next I'm going to handle our lights. I think that's going to be a fun object. It's probably one of the more complicated objects in our scene. So, let's get started on that next.